Hi there, you are listening to the Guitar Speak podcast. My name is Matt Wakeling, and this is the show I produce in Sydney, Australia, where I speak to leading guitarists and guitar figures from all around the world. Thank you so much for joining me for episode number 154. Now today I speak to Dan Orkin and Michael Lux, the directors of Reverb's The Pedal Movie. Man, an epic 2.5 hour journey into the history of guitar pedals. What's not to like? Now, full disclosure, Reverb are sponsoring the show for the next few months to promote the film, but come on, if you listen to the Guitar Speak podcast, you know how much I love pedals, and there's a good chance you love them too. So I was super happy to talk to these guys and get the backstory of The Pedal Movie. This episode is brought to you by The Pedal Movie, a feature-length film all about effects pedals created by the music gear marketplace Reverb. I am super excited about this film. The Pedal Movie features nearly 100 interviews with people like Steve Vai, Peter Frampton, Jay Mascis, Billy Corgan, and more, including some of our Guitar Speak podcast alumni like Dweezil Zappa, Sarah Lipstate, Johnny Barmer, and Brian Wampler. Reverb's The Pedal Movie is available now on iTunes, Google Play, and Vudu. For more information, visit www.thepedalmovie.com. Today's episode is also brought to you by Fretboard Biology, the comprehensive online guitar course put together by Joe Elliott. Now, Joe is not only a fantastic guitar player, he draws on his years of experience as the ex-head of guitar at the Guitar Institute of Technology and also at the McNally Smith Music College. Here's a few words from Joe about the course.
If you're tired of wading through hundreds of random guitar videos and just want to become a better player, Fretboard Biology is your answer. Fretboard Biology is a self-paced, college-level program that'll give you the right instruction, in the right amounts, and in the right order. You'll learn the same information I taught to thousands of other guitar players over 30 years of teaching in top music colleges. If you want to make real progress with your guitar playing, then sign up for a free 7-day trial at fretboardbiology.com.
Dan Orkin and Michael Lux, welcome to the Guitar Speak podcast.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Glad to be here.
Hey, congratulations on the release of The Pedal Movie. It must be a good feeling to have this film out in the wild after such a huge job in the undertaking of the production.
Absolutely. It's like, we both have experience in bands or with other things where you kind of release something you've worked on with a lot of passion, and it's always a little scary and a little exciting, but you just got to do it eventually. And it's been great to talk to people and hear reactions, and it's one of those things where everybody who sees it, it's like a great occasion to kind of geek out about what pedal they like or what guitarists they love. So there's just a lot of love going around because it's a topic that so many people are so excited about.
Yeah, it's also sort of like a lot of folks thought it was like the Chinese democracy of films where it was never going to come out. So it does feel really good to let people know. No, we were just like finessing it, making sure it was going to be really good for people. So it's out.
That's awesome. Nice Gunners reference there. We know exactly what you mean when you say that. When did it start? When was the initial seed for this planted?
So we started talking about the topic, I want to say, about 2.5 years ago or so, maybe a little bit longer. And it took a while where we were initially we were just kind of talking about doing some sort of content piece or video project about the boutique pedal industry specifically. So like the modern era. And that was, I want to say 2019. And
2018.
28, man, wow. Okay.
Yeah, I know.
Wow.
God. Yeah, some like two to 3 years ago, and we sort of started by doing some interviews with folks who we knew, various pedal builders who would be, at NAMM, for example, or who were coming through Chicago, where we're based, to kind of talk about this idea of how did the pedal industry grow so much over the course of a few decades. It went from a handful of builders making pedals in the 80s and early 90s to this explosion to today where there's thousands of people doing it. So that was really the original question. And so we started collecting interviews for that. And then at a certain point, we realized that we had enough really excellent material to maybe make something longer form, like an actual documentary. And in doing that, we kind of led to the realization that it would really be in our interest to kind of rewind and tell the story from the beginning of the pedal history, going back to like the 1950s. And so we kind of pivoted a part of the way through, and that added a bit to the process. But that was sort of how it started, was kind of asking those questions and having those initial conversations.
Fantastic. Yeah, I loved how you took a historical approach, and it made sense to ramp it up in that direction. I wasn't surprised, but it was pretty cool how much history today's pedal builders know. That they know all about. They can rattle off the correct order of fuzz pedals as they were launched, and they can talk the transistors and the circuits really fluently.
Yeah, and some were just absolutely incredible. I mean, a lot of the builders, like, admittedly know about like a certain chunks of time, and they would admit that.
Okay, yeah.
But there's certain folks, I mean, Josh, Felipe Herndon, people like that are kind of encyclopedic. George Tripp's encyclopedic with his knowledge about like the history of effects. So that was definitely considerations when we were kind of choosing the guests, I suppose, was these little pockets of information and perspective that various people brought to the table that would be representative of certain themes we were kind of going for.
Awesome. Very cool. How did you choose guests? As you said, there's thousands of pedal builders around the world these days.
Yeah,
very carefully.
It started, like I said, with sort of, hitting our network, so people we'd work with in different ways or people we knew. So, Jamie and Julie from Earthquaker Devices, we've had a good we're friends with them for over the years. Obviously high on the list. People like that. And then as we kind of built out the body of interviews, we decided to sort of more strategically fill in certain holes. And again, sort of what Michael was saying, like finding folks who filled in particular perspectives or niches that weren't necessarily covered. So for example, we really wanted to make sure we talked about the current latest and greatest in DSP and digital modeling and digital pedals. So for that, certainly we wanted to talk to Source Audio and Strymon, so we sought them out specifically. Fram Blanche, who was really influential in the 90s, is a good example of that. Somebody who we didn't know before making the movie, but reached out to because we thought she had an important part in the sort of history of that era. And a lot of examples like that. And certainly there are lots and lots of people we didn't get to talk to. We really would have liked to, but for, variety of different reasons, it didn't happen. We certainly can't get everybody.
Yeah, like Dan was saying, I actually remember some point in 2019, maybe right after NAMM or right before NAMM that year, we had actually built out a massive list of like archetypes, almost like these sort of themes we wanted to hit. So like Dan was saying, we knew that, okay, there's no way we can fit 1,000 people into this film, but who can we get that's knowledgeable and has a perspective on these various eras and these various themes that we're trying to hit, whether it's that early boutique era with George Tripp's, Fran, Zach Vex, the pedal boom people with Josh Scott, Earthquaker, Wampler, Modders, Keeley, Analog Man, DIY people like Death by Audio, Old Blood, some international perspectives, and just one person small brands like Daredevil and Dogman Effect. So it was like it just kept going from there. And then how do we get the 70s guys? How do we get Musitronics in there? How do we talk to somebody from MXR? How do we get Glenn Snoddy in this film, right? And so as it kept going through the months and months and months, we just kept kind of trying to figure out what we weren't able to what we wanted to represent,
sure,
and
yep.
who we needed to get to make that happen.
How does it work over multiple continents and a pandemic kicking in sort of midway through the process for you guys?
Yeah, I would say that was a challenge, to put it mildly. I would say honestly the kind of Americanness of a lot of the movie in terms of people who are speaking is maybe the thing that I wish we could have been a little bit more expansive with. I mean, there's no Japanese primary interviews with Japanese builders, for example, which I think both Michael and I would admit that's definitely an omission, or definitely a shortcoming. We had early designs to try to get to Japan. I mean, we obviously that would have been amazing, but it didn't really work out. And then when COVID hit, it was sort of in our last leg of filming that was obviously totally off the table. We did try to be kind of scrappy by doing some remote interviews. So that would be people who have cameras, who we can get on a video call with and have them set up the camera over here. So, for example, we had a couple lines with Ben from Redwich, who's in New Zealand, and that was how that was done. And that was a very short, I mean, he's only in the movie for a few minutes. Yeah. I mean, shout out if, we really appreciate him doing that. That was really wonderful. We're glad we got his voice, but, that was sort of a last kind of inning thing. And there's a few other examples of that remote thing with that. Yeah.
It's interesting because when we were first building momentum, it was a lot more about, because we're always traveling for Reverb shoots anyway, or pre-pandemic we were. And so a lot of it through those 2019 and even the sort of early 2020 months was okay, who is in the city that we're going to, that we're already filming in, or who's coming through Chicago, right, where our offices are. And so a lot of it at first was based on that. As we started to build momentum and build some trust behind the project, it was a little bit easier to start to schedule these. Okay, we're going to go to New York and spend a day with Mike Matthews. We start to build up to where, okay, we're going to go to Europe, we're going to go to Japan, and then the pandemic hits, and then it's March and April, and then all those opportunities are sort of off the table. So it made it definitely difficult, but at that point it was like Dan said, a lot more about, okay, who has the resources and who has somebody that they trust. And we're still talking about May and June and July here, where things were really sticky. So who has the ability to kind of do these interviews, and then we're essentially interviewing similarly to how we are right now, except they have a camera in the room.
Sure. I was super impressed with that. I was looking out for stuff like that, but I couldn't pick it. It was I think the production was so beautifully done. I'll have to rewatch and try and catch the Redwich spot there, because it looks super consistent. And I thought, man, how are these guys doing this? Because it's a tricky time to get anything done.
There's ways. You just got to be. I'm keeping those secret.
Trade secrets.
Well done. The pedal market. I'm just happy I'm alive in an era where people can make a full feature-length film about guitar pedals. Probably one of my most favorite things ever, and I'm sure the entire guitar and pedal community feels the same. With all you've looked at, with all you've researched, has the pedal market reached full saturation, or is there still room for new ground to be broken?
It's a great question, and my temptation is to just be, is to ask you, because I think you're, everybody who's interested in this stuff has a valuable and thought, opinion about this. It's something we've all thought about. I would say the way I would answer this would be, we asked a lot of the pedal builders, contemporary pedal builders we talked to, questions like, who are the people in the industry who really inspire you, and who are the people you look to as being kind of the innovative, pushing the envelope. And a lot of the answers we got were pedal companies that are making pedals that are less about doing a specific function and more about creating a particular world or offering a particular type of experience, if that makes any sense. So, for example, Chase Bliss and Maris are two very go-to forward-thinking pedal companies. And their pedals, they are ultimately, delay pedals or whatever, but they're really much more about, this doesn't sound like a delay, it sounds like the Chase Bliss mood, or, whatever pedal it is. So I think where this is going is the more people who are invested in pedals as the kind of primary component of the hobby. I think this is something that comes up in the film, but is that more and more you're seeing people who are pedal aficionados or pedal fans or pedal players who happen to play guitar or happen to play synth, and the pedal is sort of the main course of the meal. So I think the more that people are kind of approaching the hobby that way, and the more there's going to be room for pedals that kind of stand out and do things that are kind of unprecedented. And I really see where that kind of is the growth in the next inning. In terms of it being saturated, I mean, I guess I would say people thought the vintage guitar bubble was going to burst in the 80s, and it didn't actually. It's still growing. Like there's always people are always predicting the end of these sorts of things, and it's rare that they actually happen at any sort of reasonable scale relative to those predictions.
Sure.
And my perspective on that is kind of putting it akin to like music trends, like rock and roll. Like how many decades have we been through, whether we've been alive or not, where people have said like, is rock and roll dead, right? And I think it kind of comes down to new generations, not just of builders, but also of fans, people, that are kids now that will end up being effects pedal players. And regardless of the history, or regardless of who's still around or who's not, I think that personality aspect of a pedal company and how they're sort of projecting their brand and their sounds to the consumer will kind of continue to evolve. Whether it's doing throwback stuff or whether it's breaking all new ground, or specifically marketing effects for non-guitar instruments and things like that. So we might just eternally be at market saturation. It could go on for 100 more years, right?
Yeah. I speak to pedal builders on this show fairly regularly, and I often ask that question. And I mean, in my heart and in theirs, the answer is obviously no. There's still room to do stuff.
Right.
There's still room for fun.
Right.
I hope you are enjoying today's interview. Now, this podcast is brought to you by The Pedal Movie, a feature-length film all about effects pedals created by the music gear marketplace Reverb. Now, we love guitar pedals here on the Guitar Speak podcast, and we're super excited on the release of this film. The Pedal Movie explores how effects pedals and their builders have shaped modern music and guitar playing over time, from the fuzz pedal experiments of the Rolling Stones and Jimi Hendrix through the shoegaze and indie rock of the 90s and up to the modern day use of effects. Reverb also speaks with builders and leaders from more than 50 pedal brands to answer the big question, how did guitar pedals get so big? Reverb's The Pedal Movie is available now on iTunes, Google Play and Vudu. For more info, check out thepedalmovie.com. Today's show is also brought to you by Fretboard Biology. Today's episode is also brought to you by Fretboard Biology, the comprehensive online guitar course put together by master guitar teacher Joe Elliott. Now, I was a beta tester for the course, and as a music educator myself, I was very impressed by the logical layout and format of the course. Heavyweight guitarists such as Brett Garsed and Greg Koch have also endorsed the program, so check it out at www.fretboardbiology.com. Okay, back to our interview. Dan, you mentioned players who play the pedals, and there's a great line from Sarah Lipstate from Novella, who I've spoken to. I think she's fantastic. When I saw her open the film, I thought, what a perfect artist to have kicking off things, and it was great to hear her compositions throughout the film. You really tapped into a new generation of players like Sarah. Nels Klein, I mean, he's been around for a long time, but the pedal player as well as the guitar player.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a funny, really great that you mentioned Sarah and her opening the film, because well into production, we didn't know how we were going to open the film. It was one of the big sort of not a contention point, but just a question mark. And we happened to be in Brooklyn for some other reasons. Actually, was that when we were filming with Death by Audio? I think it might have been. But we ended up going to sort of like a venue where Donnie McCaslin was playing. He's an experimental sax player who played on Black Star, and Sarah Lipstate was opening. We knew Sarah for years before this, but we hadn't actually seen her play in person. And she came on stage solo, opened this set for a bunch of, a few hundred really intense sort of free jazz nerds, and just just blew everybody away, blew us away.
Awesome.
And so right then and there was sort of like the inspiration to be like, oh, we need to begin the movie with now, like with how somebody can use effects pedals as an instrument. And so, that kind of opening that door then led to like this really kind of is a future, a present, but also like a very future thing, leading to then, somebody who's been doing that for a long time, like Nels Cline, and people like Nick Reinhardt, obviously, and even Alessandro Cortini, who's in the film for a bit, from Nine Inch Nails, using it with tape loops and all that kind of stuff, and Laris Emoji, who uses it with harp. So I think that's one of the most fascinating aspects of effects pedals to me, is how people are using them as instruments themselves.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, it comes into almost more of a sound design thing, where I think Sarah says the guitar's the sound source, which harkens back to lots of art music and electronic art music practice, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely.
Did you guys have any fanboy moments meeting artists or builders that you've been into?
Lots. I would say the one that stands out the most is, Michael knows exactly what I'm going to say here, is we did a shoot with Steve Vai.
Yeah.
And that was super fun. Well, this is a good example of how we went about this. We shot a video with Steve Vai about his guitar collection, which is on the Reverb YouTube channel. And then while doing that shoot, we also interviewed him for the movie. So that was a lot of this approach, was sort of double counting to be as sort of efficient and as possible. So with Steve Vai, we went to his studio, and he was just one of the nicest, most welcoming, enthusiastic rock stars we've ever worked with. And he was just so excited to kind of show off his stuff and play stuff, and there was no request that was too big. Like, he was excited to kind of talk about everything, and to hear him talk about what he learned from Frank Zappa and like his relationship with Frank is like, yeah, I mean, it's the stuff of guitar geek, dreams. It was pretty sensational. So that one stands out for me. It was also my birthday, just coincidentally. So it was kind of a wonderful experience.
Awesome.
Yeah. For me, one of the big ones, artist wise, I grew up as a really big fan of 90s British rock, or Britpop, I guess you could call it. So Graham Coxon from Blur for me was a really big one. We had done an interview maybe a year prior with him, but he had moved to California, and so we got to go to his little studio behind his house there. And in between takes, he was like, "Do you want to just take a break and listen to the entire soundtrack for End of the Effing World Season 2 that I'm working on?" I was like, yeah. So we all sat there, awesome. And he's just such a down to earth, incredible fellow. And there's not too many people of that era of British, or sort of like large bands from that era that I could probably consider being that humble. He's like an extremely humble person.
Graham is also really, really, really funny. He has this kind of like wry Monty Python, John Lennon sarcasm kind of thing. So, I think if we watched back on his interview, there's probably a lot of like withheld laughter and, snickering kind of going on the audio track.
That's cool. Is there a bloopers reel? I imagine you've got more footage than you could squeeze in. Is there? What do you got in the vault?
Yeah. Oh, there's so much. I mean, with 100 hours of filmed footage, there's all kinds of gems in there. We have been releasing some small sort of like from the cutting room floor videos on the Reverb YouTube channel. We did one with Nels and quite a few actually. At this point, we're gonna keep doing them. As far as like actual funny bloopers, I'm probably not ready at this point, nor am I going to make our lead editor go back through the 100 hours of footage just yet to find bloopers in every interview. But I think it's definitely something that we'll try to do soon. We did put together a little blooper reel for Josh Scott's channel. We were on the JHS show yesterday, and just even going through his interview and finding 6 minutes of fun stuff was actually a lot of fun. So I think there's I think you could definitely look out for some more like whimsical stuff from those shoots pretty soon on the Reverb YouTube channel.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah. I imagine your editor's having a well-deserved break at the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, no, he's right back into it. No, yeah, he's yeah. Shout out to John Gagan, who was the lead editor. We had another great assistant editor, Jim O'Connell. It did take about 12 months of post production. It was a massive undertaking. So definitely took some time off after that. But John's right back in it, cutting more stuff for the channel. So yeah,
epic. Brian Wampler's been on this podcast, and I was excited to see him on in the film. He told me that pedal builders are more of a community than a group of competitors. Did you pick up any of that vibe in talking to all these people?
Totally. And it's something we have, he actually is the person we have on screen talking about this at the very end of the film a little bit, but it's a good example of a topic that I think we could have gone into much more depth about, but we thought that just having a little bit of acknowledgement of it kind of told, that was a big part of what the editing process was like, was finding that balance between potentially going really deep on all these sort of different sort of topics and themes versus what's enough of amount of time to kind of get the point across without going too into the weeds. But to actually answer your question, 100%. And a lot of it was we were talking to different pedal builders. A lot of them would say, "Oh, have you talked to this person? They have a really good perspective. You should make sure you interview this person." Or I was just talking to so and so about this. Oh, and when so and so did an interview with you, he told me you were going to ask me that. Or there was a whole lot of that, and they have secret group texts and email chains and whatever, Facebook, whatever it is, where they talk about where they're going to get parts, and oh man, I have an order coming up for this, and I'm short on this particular IC. Can you help me out? Oh yeah, no problem. I'll give you this stockpile. I have what I paid for it. There's a lot of that kind of thing, and I think my observation would be that, and I think the movie reflects this, even if it's not explicitly stated, is that there's a definite sense amongst these folks that a high tide raises all ships. This is a niche enough hobby that sort of relies on people being very passionate about it, that the more people who are into pedals, the better it's going to be for all their business, and nobody is going to have a pedal board that's all one company. That said, there are definitely people who have pedal boards that are all one company. But I think the idea is that Ryan from our good friend Ryan from Fuzz Roches put it pretty well, where he said it's like maybe we're all punk bands and we're all trying to get the same people to buy our CDs and t-shirts and whatever, but if we put on a show, we got to have 4 other punk bands on the bill, because that's how we're going to get the most people to come out. That's and cool. It's sort of that same, I thought that was a good analogy for it, where it's sort of, again, it's like the more people who are into this, the better it's going to be for everybody, so we should try to work together at least a bit.
Yeah, nice. What about yourselves? What's the background? I guess one thing I really dig about Reverb that I'm discovering is that so many people who work there are musicians and have some background. What are your stories, and maybe pedal related? Do you remember your first pedals, and what are the must-haves in your own rigs?
Sure. You go first, Michael.
Okay. Well, just pedal related background stuff. So, I'm going to say this. I have a couple fun things to say on the matter. I think my favorite name of an effects pedal, and I need to shout it out because you're from Australia, is actually the Bondi Art Vandelay. Yeah. It's the best name of it's the best name of a pedal ever.
Absolutely.
It's a great pedal.
Yeah.
My first pedal was a DoD Grunge, as were so many kids in the 90s. Uh-huh. Thanks Kurt Cobain, who never used one. I really like. I'm a big fan of like clean yet ethereal sounds. So like really good compressors and saturators, which I think are generally overlooked with a lot of like pedal heads. Like the Origin Cali 76 is incredible. The Wampler Ego Comp, or honestly just like a Boss CS2, like the really colorized compressors. Like I don't want that transparent compressor. Give me something that makes it sound a little studio. And then like saturators like the Strymon Deco. I absolutely love the Deco. Like it's one of those pedals where you're like, what does this do? And then you never want to turn it off again. That combined with some like Rush or like a lush ethereal kind of reverb or delay, like Earthquake or Levitation, or the Matthews Astronomer is incredible, or the Art Van delay.
Yeah. Very cool.
I'm gonna one up you on my deep cut Australian pedal pick, because one of my favorite pedals that I own is actually an Aussie pedal also, which is from a company called Seppuku Effects that I do not believe exists anymore. But when I was first really getting into pedals, I think a lot of people who are players who get into pedals, much the way as anybody who gets into like a genre of music, you have like a Sherpa, you have like your friend who knows a lot more about it, who can be like, oh, you want to check out this or this. And when I was in college, I was in a really loud band with a buddy of mine, Mike, who was sort of like, I mean, I knew a bit about pedals before that. I had a couple Boss pedals and a wah-wah pedal, but he was really into like the, you know, at that point, what was sort of like the burgeoning scene of boutique pedals. Like he had all the Devi Ever and Catalan Bread stuff. And he had this Seppuku Mind Warp, which is like an LFO based chorus. It's like a really like Robert Smith, Bauhaus, warbly kind of thing. And as soon as I saw a used one, I grabbed it because I had been using his in the band. And it's really I have it on my Reverb feed. They come up really, really, really infrequently because they stopped making them. But that's a really good one as far as I'm concerned. And then I think one of the things from this movie is that a lot of the pedals I've gotten over the past couple of years, it's been like a reflection of like, oh, I really like this person. Like I really like this brand. I like want to get one of their pedals. Again, much the same way that if you have a friend who's in a band, you like want to go to their shows, you know, or you have a friend who's a great cook, you want to go to their restaurant or whatever it is. And, you know, that kind of personality, I think, is a big part of the pedal industry, but we're definitely susceptible to it. So, you know, I see you know, a release from, you know, who I can't even, any number of pedal builders, Death by Audio, and like I immediately want to get it because Ollie and Heather and the team at Death by Audio are such, or I've become good friends. So, you know, that is guiding my pedal purchasing more and more.
That's cool. Yeah, it's nice to look at your pedal board and you know, it's there's a connection to some really cool relationships. That's awesome.
Totally.
One really cool thing about the film is that you feature female builders and musicians. We mentioned Sarah already, and other minorities in the game. Guitar pedals, I guess like a lot of guitar stuff, can be, quote, with air quotes for the podcast listeners, you know, a white guy's game. Or there's a very heavy representation. Cool that you would go out of your way to feature all sorts of folks making cool stuff.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I mean, it's not, you know, the music industries and pedal industries and, you know, music instruments industries haven't been, like, particularly diverse. But I think, like, you know, a lot of people might say, like, oh, why did you feel the need to put that in? The entire film is really about the culture. It's about the movement of culture of effects, whether that's like circuit culture, like people sharing technology and information, or people culture or artist culture, you know, pedals influencing music, etc. So with where we are today, with like the gates really being opened on all levels, like, you know, music, marketing, effects, you know, building, getting in the wires, whatever it is, with those doors really being open, I think it was really important for us, especially having those relationships with a lot of those builders and artists, to share their perspective, or have them share their perspectives, because those are their perspectives, right? And those are things that organically did come up in the interviews. It wasn't necessarily something that we had set out to put in, but the themes kept coming up. And it was really apparent that it was a really important thing to talk about, because even if today we've taken all these steps forward, you know, it's important to see that not so long ago, a lot of these folks really didn't feel that way, and there's always more that you can do. So
awesome, really, really cool. Now, possibly the last question's maybe a cruel one, because we're just a week out of the release date. We're enjoying the glow of the film being out. It's super happy fun times. Is there any plans for Reverb to do more of this?
I sure hope so. I will say that everyone, the entire team at Reverb, has been like incredibly supportive of this entire project and process. It's kind of very rare for, a company to do something like this. Mm-hmm. And the entire team all the way to the top, Dave Mandelbrot, our amazing CEO, has been just fantastically supportive and completely hands off when it comes to the creative aspects of everything. And so I don't think that it'd be out of the question that if we found the right next topic, whether it's in guitar world or in synth world or whatever it may be, that we would entertain doing another feature. I mean, that's where my heart is. But regardless of that, we'll always be putting out great content on our YouTube channel. So check that out too.
Yeah.
And it's worth shouting out that there's already a bunch of spin-off features from the movie footage on the Reverb YouTube channel. So if you watch the movie and you want some like bonus features like DVD menu stuff, it's on the Reverb YouTube channel. Pretty easy to find. There's some we have a full-length interview with Nels Klein on there. There's a full-length interview with Mike Beagle of Musitronics that's really near and dear to our hearts. A handful of other ones, and there'll be more to come.
Yeah, awesome. Well, guys, congratulations and thank you on behalf of pedal nerds everywhere for putting this together, for producing this amazing film, and thanks for being on the Guitar Speak podcast to talk about it.
Oh, thank you so much for having us. We really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks to you, and thanks to everyone who's watched the film. And if you haven't, you can find the pedal movie on iTunes, Vudu, and Google Play.
All right, there you go. Hope you enjoyed today's conversation. Now, this podcast was brought to you by The Pedal Movie, the feature-length film all about effects pedals created by Reverb. Reverb's The Pedal Movie is available now on iTunes, Google Play, and Vudu. For more information, visit thepedalmovie.com. The show was also brought to you by Fretboard Biology, the comprehensive online guitar course put together by ex-head of guitar at GIT, Joe Elliott. Check out fretboardbiology.com for more information. Alrighty then, you have been listening to the Guitar Speak podcast. My name is Matt Wakeling, and as the legendary German rocker Michael Schenker once told me,
keep rocking, keep on rocking.
Keep on rocking indeed. Thanks for tuning in. I'll catch you next time. Bye now.